Hello, and welcome to Storytime with Mrs. Louie. Hello, today's story is Spaghetti and Meatballs for All. A mathematical story. I cannot see, it's like really blurry. I think these are coming off. They're a good prop though. Spaghetti and Meatballs for All. A Marilyn Burns brainy day book. It's for Evan from DT. Who's DT? Oh, illustrated by Debbie Tilley. That's who wrote it. One fine day, Mrs. Comfort was busy tending the lettuce patch in her garden. "You know, it's been a long time since we've seen the family," she said to her husband. "You're right," answered Mr. Comfort. He was stretched out on a bench doing what he liked to do best in a vegetable garden, reading a cookbook. "Maybe it's time for a family reunion," Mrs. Comfort said. "A wonderful idea," Mr. Comfort agreed. Let's see. Menus. Dinner for two? Serves 4 to 6? Banquets? How many people are we going to be having?" he asked. The Comforts called their children. They called their parents. Mrs. Comfort called her brother. Mr. Comfort called the next-door neighbors, who were almost like family, and everyone could come. "That's 32 people altogether, including us," Mr. Comfort said. "What could possibly fit in our oven and still feed 32 people?" he wondered out loud. "Why not make your famous spaghetti and meatballs?" asked Mrs. Comfort. "Good thinking," said Mr. Comfort. "Now, what about renting some tables and chairs?" asked Mrs. Comfort, and she got out the telephone book. The telephone book? Are you serious? What year was this written? The telephone book. Copyright 1997.
As long as you love me.
Yep, telephone book. You know what? I don't even know if this is a socially acceptable distance here with 32 people. Like, the crowd is way too big. How's she going to do this? 2 weeks later, the big day arrived. Mr. Comfort got up very early and spent all morning cooking. He baked 16 loaves of garlic bread, made 8 pounds of fresh pasta. He simmered 8 quarts of spaghetti sauce and rolled 96 meatballs. Mrs. Comfort picked all her ripe tomatoes, cucumbers, and lettuce for salad. While Mrs. Comfort waited for the tables and chairs she rented, she drew a seating plan. Then she got out the dishes, the silverware, the glasses, the tablecloths, and some vases. But when the rental company arrived, they were 1 chair short. "Don't worry," said Mr. Comfort. "You'll think of something." She's like mapped out her plans. Mrs. Comfort found a folding chair. Now the tables were ready. Each had 4 place settings, 4 chairs, and a vase with lovely cut flowers. Mr. Comfort came out of the kitchen balancing 8 plates of celery and olives, 1 for each table. Just after noon, the Comfort's daughter and her husband arrived with their 2 children. "Welcome," said Mrs. Comfort. "Come sit," said Mr. Comfort. "Let's push 2 tables together so you can sit with us," suggested the Comfort's daughter. "But there won't be room," Mrs. Comfort said. "Oh, but there is," said Mr. Comfort. "There's plenty of room and plenty of garlic bread." Everyone was just about to sit down when a car pulled into the driveway. Mrs. Comfort's brother and his wife, their daughter, her husband, and their twin sons all spilled out. "Welcome," said Mr. Comfort. Sit down, sit down." "Oh, let's push over 2 more tables so we can all sit together," said Mrs. Comfort's brother's wife. The Comfort's daughter and her husband got up to help. "But that won't work," said Mrs. Comfort. Oh, I see. She had a plan and now it's being messed up. "You're so right," Mr. Comfort said. "We'll have to push 2 more tables together." "But that won't work either," said Mrs. Comfort. "Oh, you're right," said Mrs. Comfort's brother's wife. "Make way," shouted Mrs. Comfort's brother and Comfort's son-in-law. They each carried over a table and put them side by side. "You don't understand," Mrs. Comfort sighed. "My plan was—" But no one heard her. Everyone was just too busy. This poor woman, she spent all that time drawing this map and nobody's listening to her. "Save some of that garlic bread for me," a new arrival called. "Me too, me too, me too," 3 more voices piped in. "Well, look who's here," said Mrs. Comfort's brother's daughter's husband. It was the Comforts' next-door neighbors with their daughter and son. "Hello, hello," said Mr. Comfort. "So glad to see you. Have a seat while I get some more garlic bread." "But there is no place for them to sit," said Mrs. Comfort. "Oh, don't worry," said Mrs. Comfort's brother's wife. "We'll just divide these tables into 2 groups of 4. "Go ahead," Mrs. Comfort said, "but I'm telling you, and you fret too much," said Mr. Comfort. "Read anyone?" When all the tables had been rearranged, everyone sat down. "See, Mom," the Comfort's daughter said, "it worked out just fine." Mrs. Comfort just sighed. "Hiya, hiya, hiya," boomed a familiar voice. Mr. Comfort's father, mother, and their little terrier strolled in. "Hello, Grandma. Hello, Grandpa," the Comfort's daughter shouted. "Oh, dear," said Mrs. Comfort. "Where are they going to sit?" "No problem," said Mr. and Mrs. Comfort's next-door neighbor. "We just pushed all 8 tables in one long line. There's going to be room for everyone." "Actually," Mrs. Comfort began to explain. "Oh, absolutely," said Mr. Comfort, and he was carrying several big bowls of salad. "You better move fast, or this salad will really be tossed." He's so funny. They got a lot of extra chairs now. No sooner had everyone gotten settled than Mrs. Comfort's mother and father drove up in their yellow convertible. "Hello, Grammy. Hello, Gramps," the Comfort's daughter shouted. Mrs. Comfort put down her fork. "Oh, dear," she said. "Don't worry, we're all family, right?" Gramps said. "Let's just split this long line of tables in 2. There'll be plenty of room for us to squeeze in." "But it still isn't going to work because," Mrs. Comfort started to say. A bowl of salad slid into her lap. "Sorry," said one of Mrs. Comfort's brother's daughter's twin sons. Mr. and Mrs. Comfort and their 18 relatives and neighbors were finally all seated. They passed the salad and the bread. They shared the celery and the olives, and when they heard a cheery, "Hi, everyone," most of them held on to their plates. The Comfort's son and his wife pedaled in on a bicycle for 2. Their twin daughters rolled in on skates. "Didn't I tell you," Mrs. Comfort said, "there's not enough room." "Oh, no problem, Mom," said the Comfort son. "We'll just divide these 2 lines of tables into 4 pairs. Okie dokie?" Wait, you're all forgetting something," said Mrs. Comfort. "We're out of salad over here," the Comfort's daughter said. "Don't put any tomatoes in mine," said the Comfort's next-door neighbor's son. "Is there more garlic bread?" asked Mrs. Comfort's mother. "Who's got my silverware?" asked Mr. Comfort's father. "Hey," Mrs. Comfort's brother's daughter's son said to his twin brother, "that's my bread you're eating. Get your fingers out of my salad," the Comfort's son's daughter said to her twin sister. "Don't play with your food," said the Comfort's son's wife. "What did you say?" asked Mr. Comfort. "I said," Mrs. Comfort said. This is like a mouthful, all these people's names. Beep, beep, a big red van parked at the curb. Out jumped Mrs. Comfort's sister with her husband and their triplets. All 3 of the triplets had brought their boyfriends, who were also triplets. "Now, do you see what I mean?" Mrs. Comfort asked. "Where are they all going to sit?" "Well, my dearest," said Mr. Comfort, "I haven't served the spaghetti yet. We'll just move a few chairs, reset a few places. There'll be plenty of room for everyone." "I give up," cried Mrs. Comfort, and she sat down in her chair and didn't budge. "You know, I say we divide the 4 pairs of tables into 8 single tables," Mrs. Comfort's brother said. He and his wife moved 1 pair of tables apart. The triplets and their boyfriends moved the other 3 pairs. "You see," said Mr. Comfort, "it all worked out." "I see everything is back exactly the way I had it," said Mrs. Comfort. "I knew you'd think of something," said Mr. Comfort. "Now, how many meatballs would you like?" This poor woman went through all that. They moved all the chairs and everything just to get everybody seated. So I want you to take a peek at these last 2 pages because the whole point of this book is about area and perimeter, right? So they ordered all these different tables and notice that every table can seat 4 individual people on the outside. So the table has an area of 1 square unit, but each chair then represents the perimeter. So there's a perimeter of 4 units. Each time they rearranged it though, like you can look in figure 2, notice that the perimeter here of this table right there changed. So it has an area of 2, but the perimeter is 6. 6 chairs right there. Then they made some more rearranging. So take a look. The perimeter and the area are totally different each time they rearrange because sometimes when you put the 2 tables together, you lose that extra side. And that's how I can really show you the difference between the 2. So this is what I've got for you. I've got a problem for you. You're going to take a look at these different rearrangements here. And we're going to work on that problem, hopefully, together. And you're going to come up with a way that we can put together our whole entire academy with tables. So, this is the end of that book. Spaghetti and Meatballs for All. The end. Until next time.